Hey, what's up guys? Random Porpoise here, and today we're back with another video. And our video today is kind of a unique one, because we only do it once a year, but we're going to be reviewing my top 25 favorite roller coasters, and this is the 2019 edition. And as you may know, I really love roller coasters. I've ridden 71 of them, and it's time to rank them. And this is based off only my opinion, so if your favorite coaster ain't on here, sorry, that's my opinion. If your least favorite coaster is number 1, sorry, that's my opinion. But let's get right into it. First up, we have honorable mentions. These are coasters that couldn't quite make the list, but were pretty close. So we have Diamondback, Hydrus, Phobia Fear, The Racer, and Blue Streak. Sorry you guys, you couldn't make it, but you're still pretty good roller coasters, and I just wanted to make you know. So coming in at number 25 is Hydra at Dorney Park. This is the park's B&M Floorless Coaster, and it's pretty solid. It's not the best floorless coaster, in my opinion, but it's pretty high up there. But the reason I love it is because it's unique. It has a very different layout than many floorless coasters, and it also has an inversion right out of the station, which is really fun. One of the best parts of the ride, and there's not many other roller coasters that do that. And also the drop gives you some nice air time. There's a few other air time moments throughout the ride. The inversions are pretty fun too. And the only problems is that it's really short and it does kind of have a rattle. But let's move on to Backlot Stunt Coaster at Kings Island. This is a pretty nice launch coaster. It's not the most thrilling layout, but what really makes this coaster stood out to me, whatever. I just said something weirdly, but back on topic. What really made it stand out for me is the theming. There's a lot, this coaster, everywhere you are on the ride, there's something that kind of adds to the quote-unquote storyline. There's not really a storyline exactly. I mean, there might be, I don't know, but it just, there's always something that adds to the theming. And it's themed to like kind of a car chase from an action movie or something. But yeah, it's a pretty solid layout. Again, it's not the most intense, but it's not meant to be. It's meant for you to focus on the theming, and that's what makes this ride so amazing. Moving on to spot number 23, Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point, the world's first hypercoaster, and still one of the best. This isn't my favorite hypercoaster, but it's still pretty fun, and the airtime is really good, especially on the second half. Well, only on the second half, which it has some nice ejector airtime. And the first half, it doesn't really have that much airtime. There's a little bit of floater on the drop depending on where you sit, but other than that, the first half is basically just huge hills. That's the only fun part of them is the going down and up, I guess. And it is kind of rough. Well, it's pretty rough, but the airtime, I can't English, but the airtime on the second half of the ride makes up for all the flaws that Magnum has. So moving on to place 22. I just can't speak today, but. Moving on to place number 22 is Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. This is an amazing Intamin launch coaster, and it's the definition of short but sweet. Very short, very sweet. Literally just goes up and down, but that up and down is fun. It's an amazing up and down. One of the best up and downs ever. It's really just a top hat. I don't know why I'm calling it an up and down, but that's literally what it does. It's just a top hat, which just goes up and down. Back on topic. This is a very good ride, even though that's all it does. It also has some nice theming. It's themed to Drag Race, I think. I think that's what it's called. But yeah, the cars are shaped like Drag Race cars, and it also has, along the launch track, there's some bleachers where you can sit and watch if you don't feel like riding. Like, if you're too scared or too short to ride, but you want to ride, and your friend's riding or something, you can just sit there and watch the trains go, and it's pretty cool. And also the acceleration on the launch is really fun. Moving to number 21 is Possessed at Dorney Park, the Intamin Impulse Coaster. And I find that even though it's a clone, it's a good coaster. These are very underrated roller coasters, even though they only go up and down and up and down, and that's it. As like Top Thrill Dragster, it's a good up and down. The vertical spikes are really fun. When you're going upwards and facing up, you feel like you're going to go flying off the track. And when you're going up and you're facing downwards, you feel like you're just kind of hanging there from really high up, and it's really cool. It kind of feels like you're suspended in midair, and it's pretty nerve-wracking, and I love it. Moving on, another Intamin launch coaster, Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is the world's tallest roller coaster, standing at a gargantuan 456 feet. And this is a very short coaster, and it's almost a clone of Top Thrill Dragster, except that it adds a giant camelback airtime hill after the top hat before it hits the brakes. And that's what makes this ride better, in my opinion. If this had the same layout as Top Thrill Dragster would have easily won over for its lap bars instead of shoulder harnesses and being smoother. But Kingda Ka has some amazing airtime. You get some nice floater on the top hat. The acceleration is also really good on the launch, but on that last hill gives some of the strongest ejector airtime I've ever felt. And it's also pretty forceful too. Next up, we have the Bat at Kings Island, the park's aerodynamic suspended roller coaster. And I wasn't having too high expectations for this. Having ridden Iron Dragon at Cedar Point, another suspended coaster, that was a pretty tame coaster. It was more family-oriented. So I was expecting something similar with the Bat. And boy, I was wrong. This is almost the complete opposite of Iron Dragon. It's a lot shorter than Iron Dragon, because Iron Dragon's a fairly long ride. This is a very short ride, which is the only negative. But Iron Dragon's tame. This is one of the most fast-paced roller coasters I have ridden. And it feels very out of control because of the swinging of your cars while you're on the ride. They swing back and forth, as you can kind of see in the picture there. But it's you just feel out of control, and that's why I love it so much. And also, just a little warning, pretty much all of the coasters at Kings Island are amazing because they feel out of control. But I'm not going to say which ones because that's spoiler alert. But moving on, Skyrush at Hershey Park, an Intamin hyper coaster. Now, don't get me wrong, this is an amazing coaster, but the reason it's low, it's kind of underwhelming in my opinion. Most people that dislike this coaster say it's because of the restraints. I actually really think the restraints are really good. I like those restraints, and because they make you feel really free and open. I don't have a single problem with the lap bars in Skyrush. The thing is, though, it's underwhelming. I got off and I was like, that's it? I mean, it was really good, but anything else that you're gonna throw at me? But because that's the thing. It doesn't pack as much of a punch as some people say. It's really short. It feels like it's 10 seconds. It's over as soon as you hit the drop. But well, not literally, but that's what it feels like. It is pretty fast paced, but it goes by so quickly, the whole ride, that there's not too much that you can compare. And there's not too much to the ride. And also the airtime isn't super strong. It's a nice ejector, but it's not feel like you're gonna get thrown out of your seat ejector. It's just strong airtime. And that's the thing. It was just underwhelming. That's why I don't really rank it so high. To be fair, it's been a year and a half since I've ridden it, so who knows, I might get a better ride if I ever go back to Hershey Park. Coming up next is Fahrenheit, also at Hershey Park, an Intamin looping coaster. This is a pretty fun coaster. Again, it's fairly short. It is longer than Skyrush, I think. It felt longer. And I think it's better because I feel like the elements stand out more. Because Skyrush, you don't have enough time. There's not that much time to the ride. Fahrenheit is kind of like a longer Skyrush, but with inversions. And the two airtime moments on the ride, no, there's a few airtime moments on the ride, not that many, but I think there's 3 of them. All 3 of them are some of the strongest airtime ever. And I love airtime, so that's why a lot of the coasters on this list are high on this list. But there's also some pretty fun inversions. That Norwegian loop, which you can see in the pictures, the giant thing, it's a real fun element. That's probably the best part of the ride. It combines airtime with hang time and positive G's. And that's why I love it. Also, the Beyond Vertical Drop is amazing. Next up, another Hershey Park coaster. That's right, Lightning Racer is here to join the show. The dueling GCI wooden coasters at Hershey Park. These I don't know if to call it these coasters or this coaster. It's technically 2 coasters, but they're basically almost mirror imaged. But whatever. This just blew me away. It's not super great airtime. It's not super intense, although the airtime is fun. It's just an adrenaline rush. It's super fun and fast paced. And it's a pretty long ride too. And the dueling aspect just doubles the fun. Because you can have your friends racing on the red side while you're riding the green side or whatever. I don't know. I think it's red and green in this picture. But you could be on the opposite side of your friends, and you could be racing them, and you can just see your friend. You could pass by them like on multiple points of the track. And that's why I love it. Just this has a great fun factor integrated into the ride. Workspace bar. Next up, we have Bizarro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is my favorite Floorless coaster. And it's also, I have no clue what I was about to say. I just kind of said that. But it's one of the best coasters at Great Adventure. And I think it's pretty underrated. I don't hear too many things about this ride. But the inversions, what makes this ride super good is the inversions. This has some of the best inversions on any roller coaster ever, excluding inverts. But this is my favorite Floorless coaster. Every inversion is great in some way. It's either super intense or gives you some great hang time. There's not really too much airtime, but you shouldn't be expecting airtime because it's a Floorless coaster. It's meant to go upside down. And it's a pretty long ride too, so that just adds to the fun factor. Next up, we have Gatekeeper at Cedar Point, the B&M Wing Coaster. This is a pretty unique coaster. Well, all wing coasters are unique because there's not that many, but it's not the most forceful ride, but it's really fun. The drop is probably what makes it one of the things that makes it stand out, and the fact that it's winged. Like, if you put Floorless trains on this, it'd still be great, but it would be like a lot lower on my list. But the wing aspect is amazing. Every time you near a support, you feel like you're gonna get your legs and arms and head chopped off, and it freaks you out. But that just adds to the rush of the ride. I don't know what to call it, but it's a pretty solid ride. The inversions are pretty fun. The drop is amazing. You get some great hang time. I personally think the front row's better. You even get a little bit of air time on some of the hills, like that giant camel back there, and there's a bunny hill towards the end that you can kind of see. It's not the longest ride, but it's not that short either. And next up, we have the Beast at Kings Island. This is the pure definition of wild. This is a very weird coaster, and that's why it's so good. First off, we're going to talk about the length. This ride is insanely long. There's 2 lift hills. Has a ride duration of 4.5 minutes. It's crazy how long this is. And at first glance, it's not that intense. This is not a family-friendly roller coaster. This is pure thrill. Like, the layout isn't the most intense, but you're zooming through the forest. You feel so out of control, and that's amazing. There's not much airtime, but the main thing that makes this ride what it is the out of controlness of it. And another thing that adds to it, it's honestly is really rough, and that just adds to the ride. It makes you feel like you're literally being chased by a beast in a forest, and you're in like a runaway train or a runaway car or something. And it just makes it so crazy, and I love it. I just love it. I need me some of that craziness. But yeah, moving on. We have Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure, yet another hypercoaster. This is a B&M hypercoaster, one of 2 I've ridden. I personally think it's better than Diamondback, and it's not my favorite hypercoaster overall. There is one coming up soon that is a bit better. You guys might know what it is, but moving on to Nitro. Well, moving back to Nitro. This was one of my first big coasters. It was my first hypercoaster, and because it's at my home park, and I loved it. It blew me away when I rode it. It was my favorite coaster for a while. To me, it just about edged El Toro, because, like, El Toro was really intense, and it kind of freaked me out, so that took away from a little bit of the excitement on El Toro. But, so, this ride, there's literally, I can't think of a single negative thing about it, except for the fact that it can get better. Like, it's hard to explain. For what it is, it's perfect, basically. It's a floater airtime machine, packed with floater airtime. That's what this ride's all about, floater airtime. And there's a few ejector moments, but they're borderline ejector. And this is some of the greatest sustained floater airtime ever. And the drop is really fun. You get kind of flung out of your seat in the back row. That's the one ejector moment, I'd say. But there is, let me count. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 airtime moments on this ride. 11 airtime moments. All of them, well, 10 of the 11 lasting for at least 1.5 seconds, which might not seem that much on paper, but count that. 1, 2, that's 2 seconds right there. So if we go 1, 2, wait, I don't know, but just if you think about it, that's a pretty long time to be out of your seat on a roller coaster. It's also butter smooth. So it's just really fun, and it's something that everyone can enjoy. Also, the Helix is really intense. Wrong button. Number 11 is Boulder Dash at Lake Compounce. This is literally the beast, but with airtime. That's how I describe it. It isn't as long, but you take a rough wooden coaster that goes really fast through the woods, put it on a mountain, and give it airtime. You get Boulder Dash. This has some of the craziest airtime ever in the second half of the ride. And it might not be the strongest, but the lap bars, and a lot of these classic Woodies, they have lap bars that don't go all the way down. And most of the times, it doesn't really matter because you're not getting too much airtime, but the lap bars, they're like maybe an inch or two away from your body. You get flung out of your seat, and you feel like you're going to fall out, and it's insane. And it's super nerve-wracking, and it's really fun. And then you also have the thrill that that Beast has, where you're rushing through the woods at such an uncontrollably fast speed. Next up, this is, I think, the final hypercoaster on this list. It is Steel Force at Dorney Park. This, if it had B&M hyper trains, I think Nitro would be better. But what makes this coaster stand out is one of the many things that makes Boulder Dash stand out. The lap bars. These lap bars, probably the loosest lap bars on any roller coaster ever. They're like at least 2 inches away from your body, and you get some insane ejector airtime. Every single hill on this ride is provided with great airtime. The drop in the back, you get yeeted out of your seat and up against the lap bar. It's true chaos, and it's butter smooth too. But the airtime is really amazing. The Helix that's halfway through the ride provides some nice forces and laterals, positive forces. If there is one negative about this ride, I'd say, is that the seats aren't exactly padded the best. They're padded, but it's not the best padding, because you go up, and obviously your ride's 2 inches out of your seat, so at the bottom of the hill, you're going to fall back into your seat, and it's kind of annoying because you fall on a less comfortable seat, so it's kind of annoying when you fall, but I can get past that, and now usually when I go to Dorney Park, I ride it 2 or 3 times, and it's just truly amazing. And I forgot what I was going to say, but moving on. 9 is Talon at Dorney Park, the best coaster at Dorney Park. Change my mind. Well, you can't, because it's the best. Unless they get a GCI, that might get better, but on with Talon. This is also a roller coaster that's pretty short but sweet, but it's not super short. It's not as short as something like Skyrush, where it's just kind of like too short. It's the perfect length. It's not the perfect length though. Like it's hard to. It's the average. It's a little shorter than average, I'd say, for an inverted coaster. Actually, no, it's about average. But there's probably not a single bad thing about this roller coaster except for the length. You start off with an amazing drop. You get some nice weightlessness on it, even though it's curved. You don't really get airtime, but you just feel like you're free falling, and it's steeper than it looks. And the thing. You might not know why I love this ride so much if you don't know me personally, but this is probably one of the most fast-paced rides to ever be built in the history of ever. You're going just literally right after the loop. You're into the zero-G roll, then the Immelman, then the Helix, then the weird turnaround thingy, then another Helix, then the corkscrew, and It's just one element after another. There's no break in between any two elements. And it's really forceful too. You are also going super fast, like really fast. And if you're in the front, and because you're staying low to the ground, but I personally really like the front seat on this ride because you get the wind rushing in your face, and it's butter smooth. It's almost a flawless inverted coaster. Now we have Raptor, which is a flawless inverted coaster, basically. It's literally if you took Talon and doubled its length. That's pretty much all I have to say about this ride. Super fast paced and super long. The only negative is that when you're going into the brakes, there's like a weird like jolt thing and it kind of bangs your head around for a sec. But yeah, it's just pretty flawless. I don't have much more to say about this ride because it's literally just extended Talon. And one-upping it, another B&M inverted coaster. Trust me, this is the last inverted coaster on this list, I think. Yeah, it is. This is Banshee at Kings Island. This is less of an intense coaster. It's still really intense, but what made me choose it over Raptor is the drop and the barrel roll at the end. The drop is super steep, and it's just insane. The drop, it's super forceful. You're just so steep, and it exceeded my expectations a lot. And also that barrel roll, there's a barrel roll at the very end that you go super slow through, very slow, like very slow. And you get some of the craziest hang time ever. Moving on, we have Stormrunner at Hershey Park. This is not the best Intamin launch coaster. Don't worry, there's still a few more. But it's the best coaster at Hershey Park. This is a similar story with Talon, where it's very short. It's a lot shorter than Talon, but it's a launch coaster, and most launch coasters are shorter in general anyways. It's literally only like 4 elements, and that's it. But this is super fast-paced, and that's one of the 2 amazing things about it. Like, 2 amazing full qualities. I'm not counting the elements. Every element stands out also. That's another amazing quality. Every element is amazing in its own way. There's also, on the top hat, you get some of the craziest ejector airtime ever. The Flying Snake Dive, you get some of the craziest hang time and airtime ever. The Mole Snake Loop, no, not a Mole Snake Loop. I've watched too many Coaster Studios videos, but apparently it's called a Cobra Loop. Personally, I think it should be called a Mole Snake Loop because there's already a Cobra Roll as an element. That's a really fun inversion. You get some nice positive G's. But yeah. After the Flying Snake Dive, there's a few bank turns, and that's the ride, basically. So it's really short, and that's why it's not higher on this list. Moving on, we have Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. If you watched my last year's roller coaster countdown, you will have noticed that this dropped down a few places from numbers 2. And that's just because it's been dethroned, honestly. It's been dethroned by other roller coasters and changes of opinions a little bit. But it's still an amazing coaster. This was my first RMC roller. Actually, this was my first major coaster. Now that I remember. Yeah, this was my first major coaster, and I loved it. Every single ride of every single moment of this ride has no flaws. The drop is amazing. You get insane airtime. Then you get insane positive Gs. This ride's mainly focused on airtime. You get some insane airtime, and it's fairly long. The only reason that this is kind of dropped is A, because there's better roller coasters out there, and B, is its pacing. Actually, there's 3 reasons, but the pacing is the most important reason why it's dropped. There's kind of like 3 halves of this roller coaster. I know that halves can't be split into thirds, but there's 3 sections. There's the first section, which this is very similar to Steel Vengeance. I'm just going to say this is literally mini Steel Vengeance. But first section is mainly about larger elements and more positive Gs. Then the second section is a lot of small airtime hills, but slightly elevated off the ground. Then the third section is basically the same as the second section, but really low to the ground. And the third section, this is where Wicked Cyclone hits its weak point. It really slows down. You can feel that it slowed down in the third section from the drop. And that's the problem. with this ride is the pacing. And did I say there was a third thing about this that I wasn't a big fan of? Because I forget what I was about to say. Yeah, moving on. Number 4 is Maverick. This is a similar story to Raptor. This is literally extended Storm Runner. That's what it felt like to me. This is definitely a bit more focused on positive Gs than Storm Runner is. There's a lot of low to the ground bank turns, and that's what makes this ride so amazing. The speed and the positive Gs. And it's really intense, but there's not too much to say about it because it has a lot of similar qualities to Storm Runner. It also has some great airtime too. But yeah, not too much to say about it. Number 3 is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. My other hybrid coaster I've ridden. And it's my favorite hybrid coaster because I've only ridden 2 hybrid coasters. Yeah. This is basically, if you took Wicked Cyclone, made it twice as big, twice as fast, well, not quite twice as fast, and twice as long. Now think about that for a second. Exactly. This thing is gargantuan. And there's almost no flaws. This has some really great airtime. It has the most airtime on any roller coaster ever. And that's what I love about it. When I rode it, I got a little bit of room between me and my lap bar, so the airtime felt even more insane. But I just remembered the third flaw about Wicked Cyclone. And Steel Vengeance shares this flaw. The elements don't really stand out as their own. And the thing that makes this ride good is all the elements put together make one amazing roller coaster. But the thing is, not many of the elements really stood out to me. That's the thing. Like, each element on its own, it all blends in with the rest of the ride, which can be a good quality, but in my opinion, it's a negative quality. Because it's hard, how do I explain this? Because it doesn't stand out. Nothing about this ride stands out too much on its own. Everything combined about this ride is what makes it stand out. And you might think I'm saying this is a bad coaster. In no means is it a bad coaster. This is almost flawless. This is an amazing roller coaster. But then again, it's just because everything kind of blends together. Number 2, Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. A GCI wooden coaster built in 2017. I don't know why I had to include the 2017 part, because I did not include a single year of birth for year of construction for any of the other roller coasters on this list. Not year of birth, what am I saying? But this ride blew me away. Like, you take some amazing ejector airtime, amazing positive Gs and fast pacedness, a very long ride time, and then you add in a bunch of like uncontrolled elements, and smoothness to the ride. You get Mystic Timbers. Every single 90% of the airtime on this ride, well, all the airtime is ejector. 90% of it is combined with laterals because it's a twisted airtime hill, and you're just being thrown around on this ride, and in a good way. Like, you're thrown from your seat to your lap bar, to your seat, to the side of your seat, to your lap bar, to the seat, and it's just non-stop. There's no brakes in this ride until you literally hit the brake run, but that doesn't count. There's literally, the only flaw with this ride is that there is one roller coaster that's better. That's the only reason it's not number 1. There's just one roller coaster that's better, and I'm pretty sure some of you might already know it, probably all of you, but it's the one, the only El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure, the 181-foot tall, massive, intimate, prefabricated wooden coaster built in 2006 that has a 76-degree drop angle and goes 70 miles per hour, and I don't know why I just named all those stats, but this is truly a masterpiece. This used to be slightly flawed. Now it's flawed. Well, actually, it has one flaw, but it's a no one cares flaw because it's physically impossible to think about the one flaw of this ride while you're actually riding it. That's how crazy this is. And let me just get to that flaw. It's the lap bars. You don't have that much room in the seat. But it's not even a big flaw, and you forget about it. It's physically impossible to think about the stupid lap bars while you're on the ride, and that's why I just ignore the flaw. But It also did used to be kind of rough, but they did do a retracking this year in like the middle of the year. And so now it almost rides butter smooth, but it still has that little bit of bumpiness that a wooden coaster should, and it just adds to the charm. Well, what am I? It just gives it more of a wooden coaster feel, and it makes you a little more out of control. And that's what I love about it. And now on to the everything else about this ride, which is amazing. The drop. Amazing ejector airtime. You get thrown out of your seat no matter where you sit. This has, in my opinion, the strongest airtime on any roller coaster ever. Every hill on this ride is the strongest airtime ever. And that drop feels endless. And also, most of the airtime on this ride is very sustained. Like, you're up out of your seat for a solid 1.5 seconds, just like Nitro at the same park. Except for the Rolling Thunder Hill. Which, if you don't know what that is, it's this. I think it's actually the strongest moment of airtime, like negative G's wise, on any roller coaster ever. It has the highest amount of negative G's on any roller coaster that exists, except maybe Sky Rush. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that, but and it's not that long, but it is a super strong airtime moment. And then the second half of the ride is all low to the ground, bank turns, super forceful. It's just an all-around amazing coaster. And it's definitely not tame at all, so I would not recommend this being one of your first major coasters. Not like your first two, like maybe like your fourth or fifth major coaster, I'd recommend. If this is your home park, for those of you who are still getting into roller coasters or haven't ridden that many big ones, but sorry. This is an amazing ride. This is basically flawless. Nothing's wrong about it. The length, you might say, it feels longer than it actually is. Trust me. At least in my opinion. But this ride just leaves me speechless like every time I get off it now. And so that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me your opinions. What are your favorite coasters in the comments down below? And we'll see if we disagreed or agreed. But thank you for watching. Random Porpoise, peace out.